Let's be honest, people lie more often than we want to believe. And it's not always the strangers we suspect. Sometimes it's the people closest to us, a friend, a partner, or even a family member. We like to think we're good at spotting lies, but the truth is we often ignore the red flags. Not because we don't see them, but because we don't want to believe them. We want to trust the people we love. I've been in that situation. I used to think I had a good sense for character until I found out someone I trusted had been lying to my face for months. The signs were there. The problem wasn't that I didn't notice. It was that I chose to overlook them. I dismissed the subtle behavioral changes, the dodge questions, the sudden mood shifts. I convinced myself it was nothing, but it wasn't. One of the most common signs someone is lying is when they are quick to change the subject. You ask a direct, meaningful question, and suddenly they're talking about something completely unrelated. It's like they have a mental escape hatch ready to go at all times. The moment things get too personal, too real, they flee the topic. I remember being in a relationship where this happened constantly. Every time I brought up something important, our future tough decisions, emotional concerns, they would immediately pivot the conversation to something trivial. One second I was trying to talk about where we saw ourselves in a year. The next they were talking about what to eat for dinner or a meme they saw online. It was subtle, even clever at times, and I let it slide. I told myself they just weren't ready or that I was being too serious. But the truth is they were avoiding the conversation because they didn't want to face the truth or take responsibility. Here's the deeper truth. People don't avoid important conversations because they're distracted. They avoid them because they're uncomfortable. They'd rather escape than confront reality, and many of us let them. We avoid pushing too hard because we want to keep the peace, but in doing so, we often enable dishonesty. When someone frequently changes the subject to dodge serious conversations, it's not just about the topic. It's about the integrity of the relationship. A lie doesn't always come in the form of a false statement. Sometimes it's hidden in silence in the refusal to address the real issue. And those unspoken lies slowly corrode trust. If someone truly values you, they'll face hard conversations even when they're uncomfortable. If they won't, it's time to ask what kind of connection you really have. Because truth, however hard, is what builds lasting trust. Have you ever asked someone a simple, innocent question and they reacted like you accused them of committing a crime? Maybe you casually asked, "Did you take the last slice of pizza?" And suddenly they launched into a dramatic speech about how they would never do such a thing and how offended they are that you'd even suggest it. That kind of overreaction is a major red flag. It's what we call being defensive without cause, and it often points to someone hiding something. I experienced this firsthand during a group project. Every time I asked one of my teammates how his part of the work was going, he would immediately get defensive. The question was basic. "Hey, how's the report coming along?" But his reaction was explosive. He'd say things like, "Why do you always think I'm not doing my job? I've been working nonstop. I don't need anyone checking up on me." Meanwhile, this was the same guy who spent most of our meetings glued to his phone. Eventually, we discovered he hadn't done much of anything. He was using defensiveness as a smokescreen to deflect attention away from the truth. And that's what makes this behavior so revealing. Here's the uncomfortable reality. People who get defensive over harmless questions are often trying to protect a lie. It's not that they are being attacked, it's that they feel exposed. Honest people don't panic over simple questions. They answer calmly and clearly because they have nothing to hide. It's the guilty ones who act like every question is a threat. Think about it. When someone overreacts to something small, they're trying to shift the attention away from the topic and back onto you. They want you to feel like you're the problem for even asking. This is a manipulation tactic. It's meant to shut down the conversation and make you doubt yourself. But don't fall for it. If someone responds to curiosity with hostility, that's a cue to pay closer attention. Their defensiveness is often a mask for guilt. They might be trying to guard a secret or prevent you from discovering something they don't want to admit. The deeper message here is about human behavior. People who are hiding something often live on edge. They are always prepared to defend themselves even when there's no real threat. Their conscience is already burdened, so even basic questions feel like accusations. When we ignore this behavior, we make it easy for lies to survive. We teach people that they can avoid the truth by making us feel bad for asking. But asking questions is not disrespectful. It's a sign that you care about honesty. So next time someone gets overly defensive over something small, stay calm and stay curious. Their reaction might be the very thing that reveals what they're trying to keep hidden. Have you ever heard someone tell a story that sounded just a little too perfect? Every detail flows smoothly, the timing is spot on, and the entire thing feels like it was rehearsed for a movie scene. It's dramatic, captivating, and oddly flawless. At first, you might think they're just great storytellers. But more often than not, when a story is overly polished, it's a sign that something is being made up or at least heavily exaggerated. I knew someone like this. Let's call him Jake. He had a way of telling stories that could have won him an Oscar. One time he described a business deal he claimed to have closed. The way he told it, you'd think it came straight from a Hollywood script. He talked about confidently walking into the room, laying down the contract, sealing the deal with a firm handshake, and looking out over the city skyline as the sun set behind him. It was cinematic, too cinematic. And that was the problem. Real life is messy. It's unpredictable. Things rarely go perfectly. When someone's story sounds like it was built for a TED Talk, your internal lie detector should start buzzing. In Jake's case, we later found out that much of what he said was either inflated or completely fabricated. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Liars often rely on perfectly polished stories to avoid scrutiny. They know that the more seamless and entertaining the tale, the less likely you are to question it. And let's be real, we're all a little guilty of letting these stories slide because they're fun to listen to. We enjoy a good narrative. We want the story to make sense. But in doing so, we give liars exactly what they want: our trust. The deeper issue is control. People who lie this way are not just trying to impress you. They're trying to control how you perceive them. They craft the perfect story to gain admiration, avoid criticism, or deflect from the truth. They become the director, writer, and star of a narrative that benefits them, and you're expected to applaud without asking too many questions. But life doesn't work like that. Real stories include mistakes, awkward moments, and inconsistencies. That's what makes them honest. And when you ask someone for a little more detail and the smooth story begins to unravel, that's your cue that something isn't right. The takeaway is simple: don't get blinded by flawless storytelling. If something sounds too perfect, it probably is. Ask questions, press for clarity, because the truth may not be polished, but it is real. And real, even when uncomfortable, is always better than a lie dressed up to impress. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone who, even though they're speaking to you, has their body angled away? Their words might say they're engaged, but their posture tells a completely different story. It's one of those subtle, often overlooked cues that speaks volumes about what's really going on beneath the surface. I had a friend who did this a lot. Whenever we got into deeper conversations, topics that required honesty or emotional vulnerability, he would subtly shift his body away from me. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was uncomfortable in his chair. Maybe he just liked sitting at an angle. But over time, I noticed a pattern. The more personal the conversation got, the more his body turned away. It was like he was physically trying to escape the topic without having to say anything out loud. Eventually, I discovered that he had been keeping things from me. They weren't massive betrayals, but they were still lies. And here's the part that stuck with me: his body knew before his words gave it away. That's when I realized how powerful body language can be, especially when it contradicts what someone is saying. Many people think body language doesn't matter, or they dismiss it as overthinking. But that's a mistake. The body doesn't lie the way words can. When someone's posture shifts away from you in a conversation, especially during serious or emotional topics, it's often a sign that they're feeling exposed or uncomfortable with the truth. It's their subconscious trying to put distance between themselves and whatever it is they don't want to confront. We tend to ignore these signs because they're not loud or dramatic. They're quiet, they're easy to dismiss, but doing so is a missed opportunity to see the truth. Physical distance during a conversation isn't always about comfort. Sometimes it's about avoidance. And if someone keeps turning away when things get real, you need to start asking why. The deeper message here is that body language offers clues to emotional truth. When someone turns away from you, it might not seem like a big deal, but it often reveals more than their words do. They might be trying to shield themselves, not just from you, but from the reality of what's being discussed. I've learned not to ignore those cues anymore. When I notice someone shifting away from me in the middle of a conversation, I take it as a signal. Something is off. Maybe it's discomfort, maybe it's guilt, or maybe they're hiding something they're not ready to talk about. Either way, I've found that those physical movements are worth paying attention to. So next time you're talking to someone and notice their body slightly turning away, don't dismiss it. It might be a quiet signal that they're not being entirely honest. And honesty, especially in relationships that matter, deserves more than just words. It deserves full presence. Have you ever tried to bring up a serious topic with someone only to have them laugh it off like it was nothing? Maybe you were expressing a concern, sharing a personal issue, or trying to talk about something that truly mattered to you. Instead of engaging with it, they responded with a chuckle, a joke, or a sarcastic remark. On the surface, it might seem harmless, even lighthearted. But when this happens consistently, it's not just a personality quirk. It's a form of avoidance. I remember being in a relationship where this was a constant pattern. Whenever I brought up something meaningful like feeling distant or needing to talk about an unresolved issue, it was met with a quick laugh and a dismissive comment. I'd say I've been feeling disconnected lately, and the response would be, "You're overthinking. Just relax." At first, I wanted to believe they were just trying to keep things light. But the truth was they were dodging the conversation entirely. Laughter can be a beautiful thing. It relieves tension, brings people together, and lightens the mood. But when someone uses humor to escape serious discussions, it becomes a shield. It keeps the real issues buried and makes it harder for honest conversations to take place. Over time, I realized that every time they laughed off my concerns, they were shutting the door on the chance for real connection. Here's where it gets deeper. People use humor to avoid vulnerability. When a topic feels too heavy or hits too close to home, it's easier to joke than to admit fear, shame, or guilt. They might be afraid of what the conversation could lead to, accountability change, or even confrontation. So they deflect, hoping you'll drop the subject and move on. The problem is, many of us allow it. We don't want to be seen as too serious or dramatic, so we let it slide. We laugh along even when the topic is no joke. But avoiding serious conversations doesn't make the issue go away. It only delays the inevitable and allows misunderstandings to grow. If someone consistently laughs off your attempts to discuss something important, take it as a sign. They might not be ready or willing to face the truth. That kind of emotional deflection can quietly erode trust. Over time, the lack of depth in your conversations creates distance that no amount of humor can fix. The takeaway is simple. Real relationships are built on honesty, not avoidance. If you care about someone, or if someone claims to care about you, they should be able to face the hard conversations without hiding behind a joke. So the next time someone laughs off something that matters to you, don't brush it aside. Ask why they're laughing. Bring the focus back. Because what's funny to them might be very real for you, and it deserves to be heard. Have you ever asked someone a straightforward question, and instead of getting a clear answer, you received a foggy, roundabout explanation? You press for details, something specific like a name, a date, or a step-by-step update, and suddenly they're speaking in generalities using vague phrases like, "It's complicated," or "We're still figuring things out." It feels like trying to hold on to smoke with your bare hands. That's not just frustrating. It's often a sign that someone is hiding the truth. I once had a coworker who constantly talked about these big business deals he was working on. He'd mention exciting meetings and big clients, always using bold language to make it sound impressive. But when anyone asked for specifics like which company, what stage the deal was in, or when it might close, his answers became strangely elusive. He'd say things like, "We're in the early stages," or "I can't share too much yet, but it's huge." Weeks passed, nothing happened. Eventually it came out that none of it was true. He was bluffing all along. Here's the hard truth. Vagueness is the liar's best friend. When people are being honest, they don't need to dance around details. They can answer your questions clearly because they have nothing to hide. But when someone constantly stays in the gray area, it's often because the moment they get specific, the truth starts to unravel. People who lie use vagueness as a defense. They rely on your politeness, your hesitation to push further, and your desire to avoid conflict. And most of the time, it works. We tell ourselves maybe they're just private or maybe they're bad at explaining things. But in reality, they're using those vague responses to dodge accountability. There's a big difference between someone saying, "I'm not sure, but I'll find out," and someone giving you a long, winding answer that still tells you nothing. The first is honest. The second is often an intentional tactic to keep you from seeing what's really going on. And let's be real, we've all done it at some point. Maybe we were caught off guard. Maybe we didn't want to admit something. But people who care about being honest will usually circle back, clarify, or own up to what they didn't know. Consistent vagueness, on the other hand, is a red flag. The deeper message here is about trust. When someone refuses to give you clear answers, they are withholding more than just information. They are protecting something they don't want you to see. And that avoidance chips away at the foundation of any relationship. So next time you get a vague response, pay attention. Ask again. Push for clarity, because truth isn't blurry. And if someone truly respects you, they won't hide behind half answers when it matters most. Listening is one of the most powerful and underrated skills in human connection. Yet most people don't actually listen to understand. They listen to reply. Instead of giving someone their full attention, they're busy preparing their next response, waiting for the moment they can jump in and speak. The result? Shallow conversations and missed opportunities for real understanding. I've been guilty of it myself, sitting in a conversation, nodding along, pretending to engage, when in reality I was mentally crafting what I wanted to say next. At the time, I thought I was being polite. I thought I was contributing. But in hindsight, I realized I wasn't really listening at all. I wasn't trying to understand. I was just waiting for my turn. People can feel that. They know when you're not fully present. They can tell when your attention is divided, when your mind is elsewhere, and when your words are more about performance than presence. And when they sense that they don't feel heard, they feel dismissed. I remember a conversation I had with a colleague who was clearly going through a rough patch. My instinct was to jump in and offer advice to fix the situation with solutions. But something told me to just pause and truly listen. So I did. No advice, no interruptions, just space. By the end of our conversation, they told me I've never felt so heard. That moment changed the way I see listening forever. Here's the deeper truth: real listening is rare, and that's why it's so powerful. When you listen with the intent to understand, not just to respond, you create a space where people feel safe, respected, and valued. That's not just communication, that's connection. Listening to understand means being curious instead of judgmental. It means asking questions, not just giving answers. It requires patience, humility, and the willingness to put your ego aside. It's not always easy, especially when emotions run high or the topic is uncomfortable, but it's worth it. People don't always want advice. They don't always need solutions. What they want more than anything is to be understood, to feel like someone gets them. When you can offer that, you stand out. You become someone others trust, respect, and want to open up to. The takeaway is simple but powerful: stop listening just to reply. Listen to truly understand. That shift in mindset can transform not only your conversations but your relationships. Because when someone feels genuinely heard, it builds a foundation of trust that words alone can't achieve. So next time you're in a conversation, try this: slow down, stay present, and really listen. Not with the intent to fix, but to understand. That's where real connection begins. In your daily life, one of the most valuable skills you can develop is the ability to recognize when someone is not being honest with you, not through harsh accusations, but by quietly observing behavior and listening with intention. People rarely lie with outright falsehoods. More often, they dodge important topics, become overly defensive, offer perfectly rehearsed stories, laugh off serious issues, give vague answers, turn their body away from you, or fail to listen with genuine interest. These are subtle but powerful cues that someone may be hiding the truth or avoiding accountability. Instead of brushing these red flags aside to keep the peace, start paying attention. Trust your instincts. When you feel something is off, it usually is. Don't be afraid to ask direct questions or revisit important conversations that someone tries to escape. You deserve honesty, and protecting your peace sometimes means pressing for clarity, even if it makes the other person uncomfortable. Equally important: practice these principles yourself. Be the kind of person who listens to understand, not just to respond. Keep your stories honest and imperfect, because real life is rarely tidy. Face difficult conversations head on instead of using humor, distraction, or vagueness as shields. Let your body reflect openness and truth, not avoidance. By committing to this level of authenticity, you will not only recognize dishonesty in others more easily, but you will also strengthen your own relationships with integrity and trust. In a world where so many people avoid uncomfortable truths, you can set yourself apart by being grounded, present, and real. Every time you choose honesty over ease and clarity over confusion, you raise the standard for how others treat you. Whether it's in your relationships, your work environment, or personal growth, this mindset will protect you from manipulation and disappointment. It will also attract people who value truth and emotional maturity. You can't control who lies to you, but you can control whether you choose to ignore the signs. So stay sharp. Don't silence your intuition. And when someone tries to hide behind charm humor or vague words, be bold enough to see through the fog and ask for what you really need: honesty, because that is the foundation of every relationship worth keeping.